So after losing more and more vision, I just had to learn to use less and less of my sense of sight. So it was all about using my remaining four senses, like my sense of touch, my sense of smell, and my sense of hearing.
Welcome, friends, to Flip Your Script. I'm Kristi Piehl. 2 decades ago, a medical condition left Kristi Piehl without her vision. Despite only seeing just a few inches from her face, she flipped her script and learned to cook with her visual challenges. In 2012, she beat out tens of thousands of chefs and won Gordon Ramsay's MasterChef. She's now a cookbook author and the chef behind 2 restaurants that have received accolades from the James Beard Foundation. Kristi is preparing now to open another restaurant, and she's accomplished some other incredible things that I can't wait to talk with her about. Kristi, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's talk about cooking, because I think people hear that you can't see and they hear that you have won all of these awards and are at the top of your field and you work with knives. People automatically go there. How did you do this?
I guess when you put it that way, that does sound surprising. For me, I started learning to cook before I had lost my vision. So I taught myself how to cook. I'm completely self-taught. And it was really when I was in college. At first, it was a way for me to just survive and feed myself because I moved out of the dorms and needed to learn how to cook and feed myself. So I learned to cook and then realized that I enjoyed it when I fed my roommates and my friends my foods that I cooked, and they enjoyed it. It was simultaneously around the same time that I started losing my vision because of that autoimmune condition. So it was frustrating because I had to backtrack and reteach myself how to cook starting from square one every time I lost more and more vision. So my vision loss was gradual throughout my 20s. So every time I lost more vision, I would have to figure out, how do I use a knife again? How do I use the fire again? It was just like starting over and over. So after losing more and more vision, I just had to learn to use less and less of my sense of sight. So it was all about using my remaining 4 senses, like my sense of touch, my sense of smell, and my sense of hearing.
So for a lot of people, Kristi, who get a diagnosis like the one that you got, knowing that your vision would continue to deteriorate, they could say, and I think it's tempting to say, okay, well, then I'm going to have to give up on some things that I love. I'm not going to be able to do anything. And your mindset is what we often find on people that we talk to on the podcast, which is, I'm going to figure out how to do it with my current condition. Did you have a mental struggle? Did you have times where you thought, man, I'm just done with this? How did you stay positive? Because that's the part of your story that we can all benefit from.
Well, I definitely want to say that I am human. And so I go through the same expected emotions. And for me, vision loss and being diagnosed with this autoimmune condition, it is a grieving process because I was grieving the loss of my vision. So when it comes to grief, of course, we understand that there is sadness involved. There's a sense of hopelessness. Sometimes there's depression involved. So I would say that as a human being, I went through all of those emotions that you would think of. I knew, though, I think as time progressed, I saw that my friends continued to live their lives. They continued to work on their careers. They eventually got married. And so I realized that the world would continue regardless of whether I chose to participate in it or not. So I came to kind of the harsh conclusion that, well, I either need to pick myself up and join this community and figure out what my next chapter in life is or what my true purpose in life is, or I drop out and just stay depressed and give up. So I felt like that second idea was not really an option because I went through that emotion already and it wasn't a feel-good moment or many moments, but I knew that it was important to go through the process of grieving because it is natural and it leads you to acceptance eventually. And so once I started accepting my new baseline of what my life is like now as someone who is visually impaired, I was able to figure out, okay, what are the next steps to figuring out what I'm meant to do in life in spite of my vision impairment. So for me, I think, truth be told, I wasn't always positive. It took a while to get there, but I think with support of friends and family and just knowing that I have the perseverance and the ability and the strength to overcome many things, because I've gone through losing my mom when I was young, and that was a very big life challenge already. And I'd survived that. So I figured, okay, whatever other challenges life throws at me, I can figure it out eventually.
Well, that's a really good point, that it's important to deal with the emotions, because stuffing emotions, we all know that they're going to come out eventually, and they're either going to come out in good ways or they're going to come out sideways around and negatively on people around us. So deal with the emotion and move forward, which is
Right.
exactly that. That's such a great point. And you at some point, though, decided, you know what, just moving forward isn't enough. I'm going to be, and maybe this wasn't a conscious choice or something that you wrote down in a journal or said out loud. I would like to be at the top of my field. I would like to beat out thousands of other people to be a master chef. How did you decide or have the courage to try to do something as big as that was?
Well, that's a funny question because you're totally right when you said maybe I didn't set out to do that, which is true. I think for me, I was just trying to figure out, like I'd said, like what my purpose was in life. So to backtrack a little bit, my undergraduate degree was in business. And then once I was dealt with this health issue and this diagnosis, and the vision impairment, I left the corporate world and then decided to eventually, after I recovered from some other spinal cord inflammation, I decided to go back to school and pursue creative writing. So completely different field. It went into the creative arts after doing business. And it was in my last semester that I had the opportunity to audition for MasterChef. And for me, it was really because I was in creative writing school. And I think as someone who is in the arts, you try to experience as much of life as possible so that you just have more creative material. So for me, my really selfish reason for going out for MasterChef was to hopefully have some material to come home and write either a funny short story or a humor essay about. So I didn't go expecting to get as far as I did, but I just thought, okay, this will be a cool experience and I'll have some writing material. So I went off to MasterChef in my last semester of grad school, ended up obviously getting much further than I'd expected. So that's kind of really what launched the culinary side of my career, but it was something that I was not expecting, nor did I think I would do that well or even get to where I am today, where I have multiple restaurants and my restaurants have been well received. I think, though, my mentality is always to do the best that I can in whatever project I take on or whatever task I say I will do. A lot of that, it just comes from my childhood and probably being a child of immigrant Asian parents who always drove it home in my mind that they made a lot of sacrifices to come to this country to give me a better life. And so I'd better take full advantage of that and work hard and do the best that I can in everything I say I'll do. So with that mentality, that stuck with me throughout my life. And so regardless of what I take on, whether it's teaching myself how to cook, getting an undergraduate degree in business, going to school, grad school in creative writing, trying out for MasterChef, like, it may all be in good fun or maybe a hobby, but I wanted to always do the best that I can, even if it's just a hobby like cooking, or if it's just a competition I didn't really take that seriously on television. I wanted to do the best that I can. And that goes even to this day of like opening the restaurant. Like, it's a project I wanted to learn. Like, I wanted to learn what it's like to open a business and run a restaurant. But of course, I want to do it the best way that I can. So I think with that sort of mentality and mindset and work ethic, that's kind of how it got me to where I am today. But it's not like I set out to be like, I'm going to be at the top of my game or be the best in the business. Of course, that's great, but I don't strive necessarily to be the best. I tell myself the only thing I can do is be better today than I was yesterday and just try to keep improving in whatever it is, but not necessarily compare myself to other people, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense. And it's such good advice. It's such good advice. And you said something really important that I want to highlight is you said that you'll do the best you can in whatever you take on. And the whatever you take on is the part I want to like focus on for just a minute, because that means that then you can't be excellent at everything. So people have to be really intentional about what they say yes to, and then make sure that you have capacity and time to be excellent there. Because when we say yes to too many things or take on too many things, then you feel like you're kind of failing at everything, because there just isn't time in a day to say yes to every invitation that comes in, every opportunity. And the more successful you get, the more you have to curate your opportunities. Have you found that to be true, number one? And do you struggle with saying no to things?
That's a really good question too. And yes, I think it's an eternal struggle, but I will say that I'm getting better at it. And this is my kind of my philosophy on that is when I first finished like MasterChef, like there were so many opportunities that presented themselves to me. Of course, like doing more television, judging shows, cooking shows, whether it's on television or local shows, or just local competitions, doing a lot of public speaking, press opportunities. And of course, like at that time, my thought process was, well, I don't know how long this will last. I got to strike while the iron's hot. So I'm going to say yes to everything. And I slowly came to the realization that I was starting to feel burnt out. I felt spread very thin, and I felt like I was saying yes to everything and doing a lot of things, but I wasn't delivering 100% to everything I was saying yes to. And I felt like that took a toll on me. It took a toll on the people that I promised things to, and I felt like I wasn't delivering the best. And so over time, I realized that there's a lot of power in learning to say no. And it's not easy. And I think especially for myself, being first of all female and being Asian, we're often taught in our families to be submissive and obedient and always say yes and do things that are asked of us without complaint. And that's kind of the mindset that I was taught as a child. And so it was really a huge change in the paradigm that I lived in order to learn to say no. And now I think every morning when I turn on my laptop, I have it tell me only say yes to things that make you happy and that help you reach your goals. And that's kind of what I ask myself before I say yes to anything, whether it's interviews or events or requests from people, all these things. I think, do I have the bandwidth? Will it make me happy? Will it help me reach my goals? And I'm now a firm believer in that there's a lot of power in saying no, because it frees up your time and your energy to be able to focus on things that you do care about at that point in time. And it's okay to say no, because no is also not a permanent answer. It could mean later. It could mean, next week, next year, a few years from now. So no is not a forever answer. So I've learned to change the way I think in terms of that way. So I am better at saying no and feeling much more content and not burnt out.
That was so good. I love that. And I feel really honored that you said yes to us, because thank you for saying yes to us. And, I just started a graduate program. I'm getting my master's, and I've had two friends both say something really powerful to me that I'm going to share, because it goes along exactly what you were saying. And I think as friends and as supporters of each other and encouragers, especially women, we can do a better job of this for each other. So when I've told these friends of mine that I was going to go do this, they both wouldn't let me finish the conversation with them until I told them what I was going to say no to. And I think that's a really lovely thing a friend can do for someone else is, if you say yes to this, what are you going to say no to? And then I'm going to hold you accountable to that to make sure that you're actually doing it. So I love this conversation about, when you say yes and when you say no, the choices you're making and how we have to be really intentional. So thank you for that conversation. When we come back, we're going to talk about things that seem to not connect: snowboarding and writing and these other things that you do that are so cool. So right after this. Flip Your Script is produced by Media Minefield, an agency specializing in earned, owned, and paid media. With clients all over North America, Media Minefield was founded on the belief every story has value, and the power of a story is unlocked when it's shared. Oh yeah, Media Minefield's my favorite agency because I started it in 2010 when my 12-year television news career ended. I won some Emmy Awards, got to tell some incredible stories, met some amazing people, and then I was laid off. And that's enough of my Flip Your Script story. You can hear it and others by subscribing to the podcast. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to rate and review. And now back to today's guest. We've been talking to Christine about her journey from finding out that she was going to have visual impairment to cooking to saying yes to things that eventually ended her up winning MasterChef. And during this whole process, she, of course, has a personal life. And because her husband loves to snowboard, she learned to snowboard, which is a hard enough thing to do when you're 15 and have the eyesight of an animal. And here you are learning to snowboard. How was that? And why did you do it?
I mean, it was exactly like what you said. So your research is correct. My husband picked up snowboarding and I wanted to not be left out. And so I wanted to go on these trips too. And I didn't want to stay in the cabin or stay at the bottom of the mountain. So I decided, okay, I'm going to figure out what sort of adaptive programs exist to learn to ski or snowboard. And I tried my hand at it. And I would say it's definitely not easy, but I think many of you know that I'm not really one to back down from a challenge if I set my mind to it. So I figured this is my chance to try my best at something. And if I pick it up, great. If I don't, maybe it wasn't for me. But I always joke that you can't be scared if you can't see how steep the mountain is. And it sort of is true because when I could see, I was a lot more, the first time I'd ever tried skiing, I was a teenager and I had full vision then. And I was so bad at it and I was so scared. I never did it again until after I lost my vision. And I think not being able to see and learning to put my full trust in a skilled instructor to guide me down the mountain and to teach me how to snowboard, that I think was liberating. But I couldn't do that had I never lost my vision and had I not learned to trust other people. And I think that is part of my story and my journey is growing up, I was very much a controlling person, like the very type A personality. Everything had to be a very particular way. And losing my vision really turned my life upside down and taught me that I cannot be wholly independent. I need to depend on other people and trust other people and be okay with asking for help. And I think that in some ways really taught me, one, how to be a business owner and run a restaurant, because now I depend on my team. I depend on my management. I can't be the sole person that does everything myself. And then that goes with snowboarding. It's learning to fully place your life and your safety in the hands of someone else and trust that they will guide you down the mountain safely.
I just want to take a minute to let people soak all of that knowledge in. What a great learning, and so applicable. And I think it leads to a question that I'm sure, and I've seen you asked it, and I know that you'll answer it, but I think people are curious. Do you think that losing your vision has led you to be a better chef?
I think yes, in the way that I now, every time I take a bite of food or the way I think about food, it's much more nuanced and it has a lot more aspects to it than before. I think they say, which is true, that people eat first with their eyes. The presentation is still very important, but because I have one less sense to distract me, food visually is not as important to me. But the way I experience food is kind of a more immersive, multi-sensory way where I'll take a bite and all of the things that conjure up certain emotions from eating food, now comes in through the things of I think about the temperature, the contrasts and temperatures of the bite, or the taste, the textures, and all of these things now, I think because I have one less sense that can distract me, I'm much more focused on the different varying elements, I think, of what puts together a good bite. So I think in that way, it has made me a better cook.
And I warned everyone before when we got back from the commercial that I was going to be all over the place. So I'm going to leap somewhere else. You know, you have this writing degree, you've done TED Talks, you've judged different competitions, you're opening another restaurant. Talk with us about, first of all, your restaurants. I want to make sure that if people are in your area, they support them and they visit you and are paying attention to what you're doing. And also, what else is next for you? Because we know that when you say yes to things, they're done excellently.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got the restaurants. Those are really what's the things that are taking up a lot of my time. I have currently 2 restaurants that are open. My very first one that I opened in 2019 is called The Blind Goat. And the reason it's named that is because I'm known as the blind cook, and my Vietnamese zodiac sign is the goat. I was born the year of the goat. So I thought it was kind of a fun and whimsical name because I didn't want to take the food too seriously there. So it is a modern Vietnamese restaurant where I take a lot of the street foods of Vietnam and kind of put my own personal twist on it and tell my story on a plate where my background is I'm Vietnamese American, born in the US, raised in Texas. So what does that kind of food look like on a plate? So, you know, we've got some fun things. Like, of course, there's some traditional Vietnamese foods on there, but we've got something like queso, which is very much a Tex-Mex thing, but we put Vietnamese spices in it and we serve it with wonton chips instead of tortilla chips. So that is the Blind Goat. We recently opened it up in its full-scale brick and mortar restaurant space because initially it was just a small 400 square foot station inside a food hall. And so now the Blind Goat has got its own cocktail program, full bar, much bigger kitchen, expanded menu. And then my second restaurant, Xin Chào, which translates to hello in Vietnamese, is also a contemporary Vietnamese restaurant where my co-executive chef, Tony Nguyen, who is also a well-known local Houston Vietnamese American chef, we partnered together and did that restaurant really to pay homage to the foods that we grew up eating of our parents and our grandparents. So very traditional Vietnamese dishes, but of course, being Houston raised and second generation Vietnamese chefs, we are doing things like doing Texas style barbecue where we're smoking our own meats and infusing that into more traditional Vietnamese dishes. And so that one is my second restaurant. And then my third concept, completely different. I decided to not go the Vietnamese route and I wanted to flex a different side of my culinary muscle. So of course, growing up in America, I have a really soft spot for sandwiches. Like growing up, you know, we as kids, all the American kids ate a lot of sandwiches. So I want to just take like a lot of the sandwiches I love from childhood and put my own fun twist on them. And it's called Stuffed Belly in Houston as well. And it was primarily a drive-through with very little seats inside, but I just want to do something different and show a different type of comfort food to the Houston area. So all 3 of my restaurants are in Houston. So if anyone is in Texas or coming through Houston, please come visit.
Oh, I'm hungry just listening to all of that. It sounds incredible. And I love how you continue to challenge yourself and how you continue to try new things, because it's so easy just to say, boy, I've got this thing going. It's going well. I'm just going to get comfortable. But you're not someone who gets comfortable.
Right.
You like a challenge. I love that. Well, Christine, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah. Thanks, Kristi, for having me.
So this week's Flip Your Script Challenge, it's I think something that we talked about a lot and we can all lean into, which is think about when an opportunity presents itself. Only say yes if it makes you happy or it helps you reach your goals. My hope is that Christine's story empowers you to believe you're capable of more than you think, to discover motivation, to uncover inspiration, and to find the strength to turn the page.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Script, hosted by Kristi Piehl and produced by Media Minefield. If you like our message, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share our episodes with your family and friends. Do you or someone you know have a story about flipping your script? We'd love to share it. Contact us on our website, flipyourscriptpodcast.com. To stay up to date on all things Flip Your Script, make sure to follow host Kristi Piehl on social media. You can also check out the website for pictures, resources mentioned in the show, and other great episodes.